Good afternoon. Welcome to Myponga Beach. There's a little broken jetty. I photographed it before, but usually at sunrise, never at sunset. As you can tell, just looking around, you can see that the cloud's quite thick and it's very doubtful we're going to get any colour whatsoever. But that's of no mind. I'm here to do, surprise, surprise, I'm here to do some long exposures. So let me set up and then I'll talk you through. And so, over the last couple of years, I've been asked, well, many questions about long exposure, why I like it, why I do it. I try to take you through my processes every time that I'm out, especially with long exposure, but I've never really just done thoughts and considerations videos, so I suppose now's as good a time as any. Now that we're not going to have to rush at all for any colour, we can slow down, take our time and just enjoy the environment without any pressure on us. And I suppose that will bring me to the first point or consideration. I'm mindful not to call them tips because these are fairly obvious things to bear in mind, but it's sort of an internal dialogue that I have that just makes sure that I follow a few little reminders, and usually, you know, my shoot works out. So first and foremost is to get there early. Do you want a stone, sunshine? Do you want a stone? There you go. Okay, let's take our time and get in here. If you're opening the shutter for an extended period, it pays to have a tripod just to keep your camera very still. So make sure it's mounted somewhere quite securely if you can. We're just going to have a little look at this. Okay, so the first thing we need to do here is just make sure that we are central. And I think that's fair enough, and we are level. I've angled this down slightly because I want to catch some of those rocks here, and quite luckily we're able at 20 mil, we're able to capture these two black posts either side as well, which sort of bookend these rocks. I think they were originally posts leading out to the rest of the jetty, but they've gone. We, of course, with long exposure and it's not dark, we're going to have to use filters, so I'm going to grab them and then we'll carry on with this. We're going to put on our Nissy holder first of all. Sunshine, out to there. Come on, hey, come on, hey, out to there, out, get up there, get up there. Come on, over that way. There you go. Filter holder, and the second thing I'm now going to do, I'm just going to adjust my polarizer, so you can see there that it's actually darkened that water, so it's attempting to look through. It's polarizing, taking that glare off. And now if I continue to spin, you can see it's super dark, and then it'll come up bright. Now I'm not sure which way I want this yet. I usually go with a long exposure with the glare because I like to reflect the sky, because I like the symmetry between the water and the sky. So I think I'll leave that glare and that reflection in for the time being. And as that water's quite dark, I am going to pop on a grad. So a 0.9 should do us. There isn't a great deal of difference. between the sky and the water, so just to pull it down a touch, control some of those highlights. The only thing I've got to watch here is making sure that we don't get splashes on the front. I'll check that in a moment. No, I'll check it now. And we're good for now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is look at my histogram. It's giving me about 1/4 of a second or thereabouts. No, 1/5 of a second. No, 1/5 of a sec. Oh, you see that water? Swine. Yep, and it did get us, so I better get my trusty so it did get us, so I'm going to get my trusty microfiber cloth and just take that away. Swine. Okay. Okay, so it was giving us about 1/5 of a second. I think, if I remember right, and I'll have to check, I often don't, a 10 stop might give us about 140. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to focus. I might have to take 2 images here, focus stack it, because these rocks are quite close to us and that jetty remains are quite far away. So I'm just going to, before I put the 10 stop on, I'm just locking the focus in on that jetty. Then goes on the 10 stop. And you can see now it's pitch black, like sunglasses. So I need to raise the shutter speed, and because we want shutter speed. Now that's at 2 minutes, and that is not giving us very much indeed. It's quite dark, as you can see. 4 minutes, however, is a little better. What I will do though is I'm going to increase the ISO to 100. And I think that's probably best of all. Now, you try to err on the side of caution, because I suppose it's tip number 2, consideration number 2. Sun's going down, so this scene is slowly going to get darker. So don't always trust the exposure apps. I use Nifty quite often. Don't always trust them at this time of day, because that sun's going down. So it's actually getting darker incrementally. So if your app says 2 minutes, it may need slightly longer because of that, because when you start the photograph, there's more ambient light than when you've ended it. So you just have to be aware of that. And it's the same true of the camera and the histogram. So if I just fire up our histogram, it's saying we're okay. It's slightly off to the left, but right at the moment it's actually saying we're okay. I'm happy enough to go with that, and that's at 4 minutes. I'm happy to go with that, because that'll give us good movement in that cloud while we've still got some contrast up there. And if I need to take a second one for these rocks, I may take a shorter exposure, say 2 minutes, and because I only need the rocks and the water that's blended around them. I only need the rocks themselves to be sharp. I'll paint that back in later on. So no time like the present. I've got a 2-second timer on. We will just hit that and off we go. The only thing I will have to watch out for is water splashes, and yeah, fingers crossed. So to recap, number one, get there early so you can get a feel for where you are, the environment, the conditions. Oh, that was a big splash. The conditions and how they may change over time. And I think connected to that is when you're setting an exposure time. If it's at sunset as it is now, you will have to lengthen or have the option of lengthening that exposure regardless of what your histogram or your exposure app says, because the light will be going down. And the reverse is true. Oh, big. No, don't want big splashes. And the reverse is true at sunrise. So at sunrise, obviously the ambient light is getting greater, so you've got to be careful that you don't blow your highlights. So yes, sunset, be careful you don't underexpose. Sunrise, be careful you don't overexpose. But today, yeah, we've got an opportunity here to get out and just enjoy some of this moody weather. And if we did have light on those clouds, I think maybe we'd do some shorter exposures. But with not having a real tide or real waves pushing in, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So we've got to have a think about number two, where we're going to take our second image. I've got a feeling I'm going to take it from this side behind you and shoot back towards the light that's here, because if there is going to be any colour or contrast, it's going to slowly die away this way, and it'll catch the last of the light on those clouds, hopefully, just across the back there. So they may provide a really lovely backdrop for our next shot. Let's make our way over to our next location. Now I'm being careful not to step on the sand just yet, in case I want to take a picture with it. And I think I might just do that. Okay, this is definitely going to be 16 by 9. Everything's nice and stable. Yep, 16 by 9 I think. There we go. I like that water washing through. We'll capture that. It's just how much of this foreground do we want? And we may need to move just ever so slightly this way so that couple of things. Let's push these in. Ooh. There we go. Better. And the reason why I've shifted is, one, these rocks in the foreground are better. As you can see, much better. There we go. And I will need to focus stack. So this time I'm going to actually change the 10 stop for the 6, and that's because the light's changing, getting darker, so I don't need so much dark glass. So I can swap out the 10 stop for a 6 stop and still get a long exposure. And I'm going to be quick because I do like that light that's out there on those far clouds. So I'm just going to whiz this on. And This is the reverse of sunrise, whereas the nearer sunrise, the darker the glass you need. Here, it's the lighter the glass. So first thing I'm going to do is adjust my ISO. Bring that down. So make sure we're on manual, which we are. And then I'm going to bring the shutter speed down. I want about a minute, I think. So I'll now adjust. Yeah, 50 seconds should do us. I've changed my mind slightly and decided to go possibly all of this ratio 3:2 rather than 16:9. So let me just okay, let's focus in on this near rock. We've got that. 50 seconds. Let's go. I love that colour. That colour's gorgeous up there. I think we need to talk about the filters, and because I've mentioned them, I'm going to check. Yeah, no, they're fine. Not misted up, and there's no splashes of water on them. Get the most expensive filters that you can within your budget. It's no good having your camera and a decent lens and then slapping plastic on the front. So the prices are really starting to come down, which is great to see, because there's a lot of competition out there. When I first started out, I think there was only Kokin or Lee being the superior brand at that time, and Kokin being crap. And I bought Kokin because that's all I could afford. And the results were great for the first 6 months, but they were plastic coated. They were plastic grads and filters, and they just didn't last. Started to ruin images because of how bad they were. So switched over to Lee at the time, and I could live with that blue cast that the early Lee filters had. I could live with that. You could fix that in post, so that's not a problem. But the difference was massive. Just the quality, the build. Yeah, and since that, I'm now on my second set of Nissi filters, and yeah, I'm very happy with them. Happy days, hey. I think while we've got this image, I think I'm going to do one or two slightly shorter exposures. So I'm hoping in a second or so. So if I bring the ISO down, it's a second, you say, short exposure. The waves go away. So there we go. Come on, I want a big wave. I think there's one coming in. And you can see there's a little bit of colour now for us, which is great. There's a little bit of colour coming in over that hill, and you can see it behind me. There we go. Oh, not quite. Nice, we got that water, I think. Okay, and thank you for joining me here at Myponga Beach. It's had a ball. It's wonderful. Fresh air, camera, photography. There's nothing better. There's absolutely nothing better. It really does set you up. So yeah, so if I recap some of the things, some of them by example rather than just theory, is don't trust your histogram all the time, especially around sunset and sunrise. So number one is get here early, which we did. So that was great because we knew the state of the clouds, where the sun was going to set, where the colour was likely to be, the subject we were going to photograph, and some compositions around that. So that was great, so get there early. Number two, those apps. Use them, but always consider what the light's going to do during that long exposure. That's why it's very important. It's not so important if you're doing very short exposures, because nothing's going to change over a couple of seconds. So there's that. Don't go for the cheap filters if you can help it. Obviously it depends on budget, and I understand that, but I think it's probably better to be able to get one or two quality filters as opposed to a pack of substandard filters. Or you may not use filters at all, you know. If you're like me and you come out at the twilight hours, you can dispense with filters, and you're able to get, you know, up to 8 minutes, depending on how long you're willing to stand around the cold and the dark. But you know, 8 minutes at nautical twilight, easily done, no filters. Choose your best aperture. If you're on medium format, then anything from f11 through to f16. For me, I find it perfectly acceptable. If you're on full frame, then obviously different settings, so it's often f8 to f11, and I suppose if you're on micro four thirds, you're on a smaller sensor. I think it's around f8 is probably the sharpest that you should do, and that's it. So thank you very much for joining Rafi and I here. I hope this has helped in some small way, and it's not confused you more. But please look after yourself, look after your loved ones. Till next time, see ya.